3 months had passed since Amaya Johnson accepted Hyung's ring and the weight of their alliance. She had settled into her dual existence with surprising grace, attending surgical rotations at the university hospital by day, and serving as the chief medical authority for Hyung's organization by night. The gold band on her finger had become as familiar as her stethoscope, a constant reminder of the covenant she'd entered. But tonight, something felt different. Amaya was in the middle of suturing a minor laceration on one of Hyung's younger operatives when Junner burst through the door of the medical suite, his normally composed face etched with urgency. "Dr. Johnson," he said, using her formal title as he always did in front of others. "We have a situation. The boss needs you in the main study immediately." She finished the last stitch with practiced efficiency, applied the dressing, and dismissed the operative with strict aftercare instructions. As she walked through the marble corridors of the estate, Amaya noticed an unusual tension in the air. Guards stood at attention with weapons more visible than usual. The household staff moved quickly, eyes downcast. When she entered Hyung's private study, she found him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his silhouette dark against the glittering lights. He didn't turn when she entered, which was unusual. Hyung always acknowledged her presence immediately. "We have a problem," he said, his voice colder than she'd heard in weeks. "Park Min-joon has returned to the city." Amaya moved closer, her medical training making her attuned to the subtle signs of stress in his posture, the rigid set of his shoulders, the tight grip on the glass of whiskey in his hand. "Who is Park Min-joon?" Hyung finally turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, genuine concern, bordering on fear. "He was my mentor before the advisor. The man who taught me everything about this world. We had a falling out 5 years ago over territory and methods. He's ruthless, Amaya. He doesn't believe in the rules that govern our operations. And now I've received intelligence that he knows about you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Amaya felt her heart rate accelerate, but she forced herself to remain calm, to think clinically. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Hyung said, crossing the room to stand before her, his hands gently gripping her shoulders, "that you've become my greatest vulnerability. And Min-joon will exploit that without hesitation." The next morning, Amaya arrived at the university hospital for her surgical rotation, hyper-aware of her surroundings in a way she'd never been before. Hyung had insisted on doubling her security detail. 2 of his most trusted men now shadowed her at a discreet distance. She'd argued that it would draw attention, but he'd been immovable on the matter. Her attending physician, Dr. Rachel Martinez, noticed immediately. "New friends?" she asked with a raised eyebrow as they scrubbed in for a complicated gallbladder removal. "Family," Amaya replied smoothly, the lie coming easier than it should have. "My fiancé is protective." Rachel smiled knowingly. "Well, he's got good taste. That ring is gorgeous." The surgery went flawlessly, and Amaya was reviewing post-operative notes in the residence lounge when a delivery arrived, a stunning bouquet of white lilies and black roses in an expensive crystal vase. The card read simply, "Congratulations on your engagement. I look forward to meeting the woman who tamed the untamable. PMJ." Amaya's blood ran cold. She immediately pulled out the dedicated flip phone and called Hyung. He answered on the first ring. "He sent flowers to the hospital," she said quietly, moving to a corner where she couldn't be overheard. "How did he even know I work here?" "Because Min-joon is thorough," Hyung replied, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Don't touch anything. I'm sending a team to dispose of them properly. Some of his previous gifts have been more than symbolic." 20 minutes later, Junner arrived with 2 specialists wearing discreet hazmat equipment disguised as maintenance uniforms. They carefully removed the flowers, and Amaya watched through the lounge window as they loaded the vase into a specialized container in the back of a van. Junner approached her, his expression grave. "Dr. Johnson, the boss wants you to come directly to the estate after your shift. No stops, no deviations. The situation is escalating." That evening, as Amaya was escorted through the estate's entrance, she found Hyung in a tense meeting with 6 of his top lieutenants. Maps were spread across his desk, marked with red and blue zones. He looked up when she entered, and the meeting immediately paused. "Gentlemen," he said with quiet authority, "we'll continue this in an hour. Leave us." When they were alone, Hyung pulled Amaya into his arms, holding her with an intensity that spoke of deep fear masked by control. "The flowers were clean," he murmured against her hair. "But that's not the point. He's declaring his intentions. He wants me to know that he can reach you anywhere, anytime." The Neutral Ground was an upscale Korean restaurant in the financial district, closed to the public for the evening and swept thoroughly by both organizations for surveillance devices. Amaya dressed carefully in a tailored black dress that Hyung had selected, elegant, professional, conveying power without provocation. As they entered the private dining room, Amaya got her first look at Park Min-joon. He was older than Hyung, perhaps in his mid-50s, with silver threading through his dark hair and sharp, calculating eyes that missed nothing. He stood when they entered, his smile polite but predatory. "Hang-ah," he said with false warmth, using an informal diminutive that was clearly meant to irritate. "It's been too long. And this must be the remarkable Dr. Johnson. Your reputation precedes you." Amaya felt Hyung's hand on the small of her back, a subtle reminder of his presence and protection. She extended her hand professionally. "Mr. Park, I understand you have a history with my fiancé." Min-joon's handshake was firm, his skin cold. "History is such a bland word for what we share. Hyung was like a son to me once. I taught him everything he knows about this business. And then he decided my methods were too unrefined for his taste." They sat, and servers brought course after course of elaborate Korean cuisine. Throughout the meal, Min-joon directed his conversation primarily at Amaya, asking about her studies, her background, her aspirations. His intelligence gathering was masterful, disguised as polite interest. "It's fascinating," Min-joon said, setting down his chopsticks and regarding Amaya with those penetrating eyes. "How a waitress from a diner becomes the chief medical officer of Hyung's operation. The security around the confidant surgery was unprecedented. That must have been quite an ordeal for you." Amaya met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "I don't discuss my patients, Mr. Park. Surely you understand the importance of confidentiality in your line of work." Min-joon laughed, genuine amusement flickering across his face. "Oh, she's good, Hyung. I see why you claimed her. But here's what troubles me. You've always been so careful about separating your personal life from business. And now you've made this brilliant young woman the centerpiece of your operation. That seems uncharacteristically reckless." Hyung's voice was ice. "Get to the point, Min-joon." The older man leaned back, his expression hardening. "The point is that I'm expanding back into the territories I left 5 years ago. Our paths will cross again, inevitably. I wanted to extend the courtesy of a warning, keep your assets secure. Things are going to become very unstable in the coming months. It would be unfortunate if someone valuable got caught in the crossfire." The threat was barely veiled. Amaya felt Hyung tense beside her, but before he could respond, she spoke up. "Mr. Park, I appreciate your concern. But I'm not an asset that needs securing. I'm a doctor with very specific skills and very firm principles. I treat people based on medical necessity, not politics. If your organization needs medical assistance in the future, I hope you'll remember that." The room went silent. Minjun stared at her, clearly not expecting such a bold statement. Then slowly, his smile widened. "Remarkable," he said softly. "Truly remarkable. Hyung, you haven't just found a wife. You found a queen." He stood, the meeting clearly over. "I'll remember your offer, Dr. Johnson. Let's hope circumstances never require me to take you up on it." After Minjun left, Hyung turned to Amaya, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "That was either very brave or very foolish." "It was honest," Amaya replied. "You told me my control is absolute in my domain. I meant what I said. I'm a doctor first. Whatever chess game you two are playing, I won't compromise my principles." Hyung pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "That integrity is what makes you irreplaceable. But Amaya, you need to understand, Minjun doesn't respect principles. He respects power. And by declaring your independence tonight, you've just painted an even larger target on your back." 2 weeks passed with deceptive calm. Amaya threw herself into her work, completing a particularly challenging rotation in trauma surgery, while maintaining her duties to Hyung's organization. The advisor had recovered fully and returned to his position, expressing his gratitude to Amaya with a formal bow and a gift of an antique medical text that had belonged to his grandfather, a physician in Seoul. Life seemed to be settling into a new normal. Hyung had been busy consolidating his positions in response to Minjun's return, spending long hours in strategy meetings. Amaya found herself missing him, their time together reduced to late nights when he would join her in their private quarters, exhausted but always making time to ask about her day. It was a Wednesday evening when everything shattered. Amaya was in her study at the high-security condo, reviewing case files for an upcoming exam, when the dedicated flip phone rang. She answered expecting Hyung, but instead heard Junner's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "Dr. Johnson, we have a critical situation. The estate is under attack. Multiple casualties. The boss is requesting your immediate presence," but he paused, and she could hear gunfire in the background. "But I need to be honest with you. Coming here right now is extremely dangerous. The boss wants you safe, but we desperately need your skills." Amaya was already moving, grabbing her trauma kit and pulling on her jacket. "I'm coming, Junna. What's the entry point?" "The west service entrance will be the safest route. We'll have a team waiting to bring you in." "Dr. Johnson," his voice cracked slightly. "The boss is injured." Her blood turned to ice. "How bad?" "Gunshot wound. Upper left chest. He's still mobile and giving orders, but—" "Save your strength," Amaya commanded, her fingers gentle but efficient as she cleaned and examined the wound. "The bullet went through. That's good. Missed the subclavian artery by centimeters. You're incredibly lucky." The drive the city was a blur of streetlights and adrenaline. When they arrived at the estate, it looked like a war zone. Security barriers had been erected, and she could see the aftermath of an intense firefight: bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, small fires being extinguished by the household staff. Junner met her at the west entrance, his face grim and his jacket torn. He escorted her through a maze of corridors to what appeared to be a reinforced safe room. Inside she found Hyung sitting in a chair, his shirt soaked with blood, while 2 of his men stood guard and the advisor sat nearby, his face ashen. "Amaya," Hyung said, his voice strained but controlled. "I told them not to call you. This scene isn't secure." "And I told you that your word is final in your domain, and mine is final in mine," Amaya replied, moving into full clinical mode. She pushed aside his torn shirt to examine the wound. "This is my domain now. Everyone except Junner, out. I need space to work." The room cleared immediately, even the advisor leaving without question. As Amaya worked to assess the damage, Hyung spoke quietly. It was Min Jun's people. A coordinated strike on 3 of our locations simultaneously. We repelled them, but... I'll be there in 10 minutes, Amaya interrupted, her mind already running through the medical protocols. Keep him still if possible. Apply direct pressure. Don't let him move unless absolutely necessary. The next 72 hours were a hurricane of security upgrades and strategic repositioning. Hyung, despite his injury, refused to stay down, coordinating the organization's response to Min Jun's escalating aggression. Amaya was moved into the estate full-time, her condo deemed too vulnerable despite its previous security measures. She'd expected fear, but what she felt instead was a cold, analytical anger. Min Jun had violated her space, had tried to use her as a pawn in his war with Hyung. She was done being reactive. On the 3rd night, Amaya found Hyung in his study, reviewing intelligence reports with the advisor and 3 other senior members of the organization. She entered without knocking, and the conversation immediately stopped. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "All of you." Hyung studied her face, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. "Gentlemen, give us the room." "No," Amaya countered. "They need to hear this too. I have a proposal." The advisor raised an eyebrow but settled back into his chair. The other men exchanged glances but remained seated. Amaya moved to the center of the room, her mind clear and focused. "Min Jun is using me as leverage because he believes I'm Hyung's weakness. Every move he's made has been designed to demonstrate that I'm vulnerable, that my presence in this organization is a liability." "You're not a liability," Hyung said immediately, but Amaya held up her hand. "Let me finish. He's right that I'm a vulnerability in the traditional sense. I can be threatened, used as a bargaining chip, hurt to hurt you. But that's only true if we continue playing by his rules. I propose we change the game entirely." The advisor leaned forward, interested. "How?" "By making me not just your chief medical officer, but a truly independent asset. Min Jun sent that message to my hospital because he wants me to know he has reach into my civilian life. But what if we use that? What if I publicly offer my services as a neutral medical professional to all organizations in the city? Not as Hyung's wife or property, but as an independent doctor who treats anyone regardless of affiliation." The room erupted in protests, but Hyung raised his hand for silence, his eyes never leaving Amaya's face. "Continue." "Think about it strategically," Amaya pressed. "Right now, I'm a target because I'm yours exclusively. But if I'm neutral, if I have patience and connections across multiple organizations, I become untouchable. Harming me would create enemies everywhere. I'd be like the advisor, valuable to everyone, vulnerable to no one." "Except you'd be walking into enemy territory alone," Hyung said, his voice tight with barely suppressed emotion. "You'd be putting yourself in the line of fire constantly." "I'm already in the line of fire," Amaya countered. "At least this way, I control the terms of engagement." "And Hyung," she moved to stand before him, her hand reaching for his. "This is the only way I can keep doing what I love without constantly being used against you. I'm a doctor. Let me be a doctor." The room was silent as Hyung struggled with the proposal. Finally, the advisor spoke up. "It's brilliant," he said quietly. "Unconventional, risky, but brilliant. If Dr. Johnson becomes a neutral asset, a physician who serves all organizations equally, she gains a protection that we alone cannot provide her. She becomes like Switzerland, too valuable to attack, too connected to threaten." One of the other senior members nodded slowly. "It would also give us intelligence opportunities. If she's treating members of rival organizations, she'll be in a position to observe, to gather information. No, Amaya said sharply. If I do this, I do it with complete medical integrity. I will not spy on my patients. That's non-negotiable. The moment anyone believes I'm using my position for intelligence gathering, my neutrality is destroyed and I become a target again. Hyung stood, wincing slightly at the pull on his healing wound. He turned away from the group, staring out the window at the city below. Amaya could see the war happening inside him, his need to protect her warring with his respect for her autonomy and his recognition of the strategic value of her plan. Finally, he turned back. If we do this, there are conditions. You never go anywhere without security, even if that security is discreet. You maintain regular contact at all times. And the first sign that your neutrality is being exploited or that you're in danger, we pull you back immediately. Amaya nodded. Agreed. And Hyung continued, moving to stand directly before her, his hands cupping her face with infinite tenderness despite the gravity of the moment. You acknowledge that this terrifies me. That every moment you're out there, I'll be thinking of all the ways this could go wrong. I know, Amaya whispered. But this is the only way forward. For both of us. The advisor stood. I'll begin making the necessary contacts. We'll need to carefully orchestrate the announcement of Dr. Johnson's new status. It will need to be done in a way that makes clear she has our blessing but is truly independent. Over the next week, the plan was set in motion. Word spread through the underground networks that the remarkable Dr. Johnson, the woman who had saved the life of Hyung's most valued advisor, was offering her services as a neutral physician to all organizations in the city. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Amaya set up a secure communication channel and began receiving requests for consultations, emergency calls, and even requests for preventive care. She moved through her days with a confidence she'd never felt before. She was finally fully herself, both parts of her life integrated into a coherent whole. But on a rainy Thursday evening, 2 weeks after her declaration of neutrality, Amaya received a call on her dedicated medical line from an unknown number. Dr. Johnson, came a gravelly voice she didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I work for Park Min-jun. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. Mr. Park himself has been badly injured in an accident. He's requesting you specifically. Amaya's mind raced. This was the test, the moment that would determine whether her neutrality was real or just theater. What's the nature of the injury? Severe trauma from an explosion. He's stable but in critical condition. We have him at a secure location. We'll send a car for you. I'll need to bring my full medical equipment and one assistant, Amaya said, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. And I need coordinates in advance. No blind pickups. Understood. The coordinates will be sent to your phone. Dr. Johnson, Mr. Park said to tell you that this is your chance to prove that your principles are real. That you truly treat patients based on medical necessity, not politics. The line went dead. Amaya immediately called Hyung. When he answered, she could hear the tension in his breathing. He already knows, Hyung said before she could speak. We've been monitoring Min-jun's communications. The explosion was real, a car bomb from a rival organization we're not affiliated with. Amaya, this could be a trap. It could be, she agreed. Or it could be exactly what he said, a test of my principles. If I refuse to treat him, my neutrality means nothing. I become just another piece in your chess game. And if you go and it's a trap you die, Hyung said bluntly. I can't allow that. You don't get to allow or disallow, Amaya reminded him gently. Remember our agreement. This is my domain. My decision. The silence on the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Hyung spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "Then I'm coming with you. Not as your husband or your boss, but as your security. You said you needed an assistant. I volunteer." "Hyung, you're still healing." "I'm coming," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And so is Junner and a full tactical team. They'll stay out of sight, but they'll be there. That's my condition. You don't go into Minjun's territory without protection." Amaya closed her eyes, knowing the compromise she'd have to accept. "Okay. But when we're there, you follow my lead. In the medical space, I'm in command." "Always," Hyung agreed. An hour later, Amaya found herself in an armored SUV, heading toward the coordinates she'd been sent, a warehouse district on the opposite side of the city from Hyung's territories. She was dressed in her medical scrubs, her trauma kit on her lap, and Hyung beside her in all black tactical gear, looking every inch the dangerous enforcer he was. When they arrived, they were met by 4 of Minjun's men, all armed and wary. The lead operative, a stern-faced man in his 30s, addressed Amaya. "Dr. Johnson, we need to search your equipment." "No," Amaya said firmly. "You don't touch my medical supplies. But you can watch me unpack everything and verify that there are no weapons or surveillance devices. That's the compromise." The operative looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. After a thorough visual inspection of her equipment, they were escorted into the warehouse. The interior had been converted into a makeshift medical facility, crude but functional. And on a surgical table in the center, surrounded by harsh fluorescent lights, lay Park Min-jun. He looked bad. Burns covered the left side of his body, and there was evidence of shrapnel wounds. But his eyes were alert, and when he saw Amaya, he managed a pained smile. "Dr. Johnson," he rasped. "You came. I wasn't certain you would." "I'm a doctor," Amaya replied, moving immediately into professional mode. She began her examination, her hands gentle but efficient. "I treat patients who need help. Now stop talking and let me work." For the next 3 hours, Amaya performed what was essentially a field surgery, removing shrapnel, treating burns, and stabilizing Minjun's condition. Hyung assisted her silently, his presence steady and reassuring, following her commands without question. When she finally stepped back, exhausted but satisfied, Minjun was sleeping peacefully, his vitals stable. One of his senior lieutenants approached her, respect clear in his expression. "Dr. Johnson, on behalf of our organization, we are in your debt." "No debt," Amaya said, echoing what she'd told the advisor. "Just remember that I'm neutral. I treated your boss tonight, and tomorrow I might treat someone from an organization that's your rival. My medical services don't imply political allegiance." "Understood," the lieutenant said. "But respect is still owed." As Amaya and Hyung were preparing to leave, Minjun's eyes fluttered open. He gestured weakly for Amaya to come closer. "You're a remarkable woman," he whispered. "Hyung is lucky to have you. And you've proven tonight that your principles are real." He paused, taking a labored breath. "Which is why I need to warn you. The car bomb tonight, it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else, and I intercepted it by accident. Someone is playing a larger game than the war between Hyung and me. Someone who wants chaos in all our organizations." Amaya felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "Who?" "I don't know yet," Minjun admitted. "But Dr. Johnson, be careful. Your neutrality makes you powerful, but it also makes you a target for anyone who wants to destabilize the balance of power in this city. You've become more important than you realize." As they drove back through the night, Amaya processed Minjun's warning. She thought that declaring her neutrality would make her safer, but instead it seemed she'd positioned herself at the center of something much larger and more dangerous than she'd imagined. Hyung reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing the gold band on her finger. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "we face it together." But even as she squeezed his hand in agreement, Amaya couldn't shake the feeling that the real game was only just beginning, and that she'd unknowingly made herself a queen on a chessboard where all the players were willing to sacrifice anything to win. The dedicated flip phone rang, shattering the quiet of the car. Amaya answered, expecting Junner with an update on the security sweep of the warehouse district. Instead, a digitally distorted voice spoke, cold and mechanical. "Dr. Johnson, you've become quite the political force. The neutral healer. Switzerland in a city at war. But neutrality is an illusion, and you're about to learn that the hard way. Check your medical bag. We left you a gift." The line went dead. Amaya's hands trembled as she slowly reached for her trauma kit. Hyung was already on his phone, barking orders for the vehicle to stop and for the bomb squad to be mobilized. But Amaya had a terrible certainty that whatever was in her bag, it wasn't a bomb. She opened the kit carefully. Everything looked normal at first, her instruments, her medications, her supplies. But tucked into the side pocket was a photograph she'd never seen before. It showed her parents' small house in their hometown, 2 states away. The house where her younger sister still lived while finishing community college. The house that she'd kept carefully separated from her life with Hyung. And written across the bottom in red ink were 7 words that made her blood run cold. "Neutrality protects you. But not them."